Kidmissing TV. I am your host, Angelina Wilson. Today I'm going to talk about the case of two little boys who vanished and were later found murdered. They vanished together, which is unusual. They were James Crosby, 16, and William Billy Huff, 14. They vanished on November 1st, 1972. Their partial skeletal remains were found on April 1st, 1984. By some men who were leading a game hunting party with dogs. They started finding boots and clothes with bones inside, and yeah, it was creepy. So they called the sheriff's department, and heading the investigation was Colton County Sheriff's Deputy Steve Basil. It didn't take very long for the remains to be identified as James Allen Crosby and William Edward Huff, who had disappeared from the junior high school. The case remains unsolved as to who murdered the boys and why. There were 12 sheriff's deputies at the time, so it was a small department, and they had a very hard time figuring out what happened. There was a landfill behind the school. Then there was a lot of runaways, and then there was a lot of things going on. Oh no, runways of the airport. So there was a lot of things going on around the school. This school wasn't, from the sounds of things, very isolated. Like my elementary school, for instance, pretty isolated. You'd have to know it was there if you were going to abduct a kid from it. Highly unlikely. Like I said, unless you knew it was there, you'd have to be either a parent or someone who attended the school to know it was there, because it's at the top of the hill at the end of a dead end. So, yeah, it's probably a better place for it. They didn't have enough for DNA when DNA first became accepted, so, and they had nothing really to compare it to. I suppose they could go back to the pants and see if there's something on them. And interestingly, police have questioned the absence of the boys' skulls. I wonder if that means they were decapitated. Again, this was in Walterboro, South Carolina. South Carolina is not that far from Florida, and it makes you wonder, with the skulls not being found, or at least it makes me wonder, if the case had something to do with Adam Walsh, dare I say? Because we know that his head was the only thing found. They actually took the family where the remains were found, which is not unusual. A businessman from the area of Walterboro came forward in 1987 and said that in the fall of 1974, he and three other teenagers found the bodies while cutting school, but were too afraid to tell anyone. That seems like a plausible story. Billy's mother, Alberta Huff Fillers, has suffered so much. She buried her husband, she buried her little boy, she buried 4 other boys, and a daughter. She is now 83 years old. And James's mother refused to be interviewed, which makes sense. Now, interestingly, they were in junior high school, yet James was 16. That makes me wonder if James didn't have some learning difficulties. that doesn't, I'm not saying that excuses what happened to them. Please understand that. I just am wondering out loud if that made them more vulnerable, you know. Because being 14, it is possible. The other one was in 8th grade. Um, I was in 8th grade at 14. So, because I had 2 years of kindergarten. So, anything's possible. But if you're 16 and you're still in junior high school, when you should probably be a sophomore, it makes me wonder if there wasn't a learning difficulty and maybe an added vulnerability to him, which made him an easier target for a predator. And I can understand, by the way, why his mother wouldn't comment for the new article. She's probably still dealing with it, and she doesn't want to be reminded all the time that somebody killed her child and took off with his head. And all she got back were clothing full of bones. Now, it's unfortunate that the teenage boys who cut school, excuse me, it didn't come forward when they saw the bodies, because the bodies would have been in much better condition. Although maybe not, because it was 2 years later. But who knows? There could have been more that could have been learned. Will this case ever be solved? I'm not sure. I mean, there are possibilities, I suppose, if they did go through the clothing and try to get DNA off the clothing, because I'm sure they have it. Like I said, I wonder out loud about the connection to Adam Walsh, and yes, I realize it was several years before Adam. And interestingly, too, the boys that were cutting school that said they saw the remains never mentioned whether they were heads or not. At least not in the media. It wasn't mentioned whether they mentioned. So, did an animal drag off a head? I find that difficult to believe. Head is a very heavy part of the body, and it's not, I don't mean to be gross here, but it's not a part that has a lot that you can eat. I mean, that's what animals do. Like I said, I'm not trying to be gross here or disrespectful, but to me it would seem that they would go for everything below the neck. Just saying. Well, I say that, but, and again, I apologize, I'm not being disrespectful, but birds do go for eyes. If you have any information about this case, were you in the woods? Did you see something? Did you live in the area? Did you hear something? You can call the Sheriff's Department at 1-843-549-2211. That's 1-843-549-2211. Again, Williams' family is still very vocal, but both families deserve justice. I just think that everybody deals with things differently, and maybe the James family is having a harder time. Don't assume that they had something to do with it or anything like that just because they're not speaking 50 years later. I can understand. They buried their child, and whether justice is ever served or not, it may not be as big a priority to them because they did get their child back. Like I said, everyone's different. Thank you so much for joining me for this very interesting case. Next time we'll be talking about the case of Rosemarie Lewandowski. Rosemarie disappeared at age 13 from Ocean Springs, Mississippi in 1973. So please join us for that. And again, if you have any information, please call the number. I'll give it to you one more time. 1-843-549-2211. 1-843-549-2211. And that's the Collette County Sheriff's Department. They need all the help they can get in all of these cases. Thank you. Have a great day. And by the way, I just want to do a little programming note before we go. You'll note that this show is Monday. We have switched to Mondays for personal reasons. We're probably going to do Mondays and Wednesdays from now on. Again, for personal reasons. So I hope you can join us and share and let everybody know that we're changing our days for the show. Have a great day and God bless you.